Cassandra, who attempted to warn them, but nobody listened to her. At night, they all got drunk, and the Greeks came down, the ships returned, they opened the doors, and they massacred the society. I think there's a beautiful metaphor there for colonialism, because what the colonialists did when they quote-unquote retreated from the Muslim lands, they had made a Trojan horse, and it was basically a system of governance and a system of education that would ensure that the interest of the colonialists would be maintained long after they departed, but without being taxed by the financial burden
yes.
of colonialism.
Yes.
So I think colonialism is alive and well in the Muslim world.
So that it is now hegemony of ideas which the West has left behind.
I think so. I think if you colonize the mind, I mean, for 100 years ago, the Muslim bodies were colonized, but their minds weren't colonized
But
yet.
then you're admitting that if it is the hegemony of ideas, on the plane of ideas, we have had nothing to offer.
Well, I think there's a bankruptcy. Yeah, that is true. I think the Muslim, one of the tragedies of modern Muslim discourse is there's always this idea, Islam is the solution, Islam is the solution, blah, blah, blah. Where's the plan?
Where's the proof?
Where's the proof? You have to put up or shut up, like they say in the West.
Mm-hmm.
There's no evidence. Most Muslims don't even know what Islam is.
Mm-hmm.
They know the slogan. They know they're supposed to say that, but do they really understand the Sharia? Do they understand the economic plan that Muslim scholars have set out to rejuvenate societies? Very few Muslims know any of this stuff. I think there's more of an emotional type of allegiance to Islam than there is an intellectual, and the tragedy of that is that emotions are very easily manipulated.
Right.
And this is what happens in the Muslim world constantly. Muslims are manipulated. You can get them up into a fury and have them burning the American flag or doing this, and
reactive.
It's all reactive.
Yes.
There's no intelligence behind it.
Nothing. No, setting aside those knee-jerk responses, would you say then that psychologically and intellectually we have been so scarred that we have not been able to formulate anything of substance to stem this overpowering?
Yeah, I don't know if it's scarring. I would say it's more like post-traumatic stress syndrome. I think that what happens when people have major traumas, it's a very interesting phenomenon, trauma, and I think that, I don't think it's just the Muslims. I think the whole world is in a traumatic state. I think that industrialization and the technological society have happened so quickly and have so radically altered life on this planet as it was known for millennia. Human beings they're in trauma, and they're in a lot of denial. That's one of the things about trauma victims, is that they say, I'm fine, leave me alone. And they're not. I think the West they look a little better than the Muslims. The Muslims look pretty pathetic. But I would say, in most ways, the Muslims are actually a lot better off than the West.
Well, anyway.
I really believe that. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
In the West, if you go to a Muslim country, they're dirty. Right? And Western people, they get really bothered by that. Like there's garbage and people just throw things around. To me, that's a sick person whose symptoms are showing. In this country, everything looks clean, but where's the garbage going? The production of garbage in this country is at such staggering levels. They're running out of landfills. So it looks very nice on the outward, and the Muslim world looks really bad on the outward, right? But over here, it's all hidden. Nobody knows there's a problem, because every week this garbage guy shows up and takes all the garbage and hides it.
No, I think in what you have alluded to, you certainly have made a point that the ideas here, or the society, has gone to the other extreme, and for which really an average American who thinks like us is also mortified. They admit that this is what is happening. But
I think people are in a delusional state. I'll just give you an example on the same theme. If you look at the Muslim world, we have, most of the countries are tyrannies. you have this control model, dictatorial. It's pathetic. I mean, some of them actually have, I mean, they're basically just mafiosa that have taken over the country, and they're running it like a mafia gang runs a turf. On the other hand, if you look at the West, it looks pretty good, you know, but the truth is, if you look at the corporate hegemony in this country, if you look at the almost absolute power that corporations have on government here, it's tyranny of another name. It's more pleasant. I mean, Malcolm X used to use the analogy of the house Negro and the field Negro, and I would say that Americans, we're house Negroes. It's nicer, we eat better food, we wear better clothes, we're still slaves. I mean, out there in the quote-unquote third world, they're field blacks.
Yes.
That's what they are. But we're still living in a slave system. Yeah. People are wage slaves. They're slaves of fear. I mean, you have Newsweek and Time showing people, are you scared yet? I mean, that's a headline to create this sense of economic fear. They're always worried about losing their jobs. Well, what they did is they took away from these people the initiative and the ability to work for themselves, made them employees of multinational corporations, and then keep them in this panic state, a fear state.
Well, whereas, I think that is the ultimate.
You don't have that in the Muslim world.
Yes, but
I mean, Muslims, despite the fact that economically there's a lot of terrible conditions, on the other hand, Muslims generally, and this has been my experience living in the Muslim world, Muslims have a general trust in the creation. They don't have that same anxiety of provision that people here do. The levels of stress in a lot of the Muslim countries, and this is my experience of living amongst Muslims, in living in North Africa, in living in the Middle East. I really believe that.
Well, I think I would slightly disagree with you.
That's
that
fine.
The level of stress you think is lesser there. No, the level of stress is of a different kind and is equally compelling when I look at a newspaper showing the Afghan refugee problem, or other problems for which we bear the moral responsibility.
No, we don't. I don't believe that. See, well, who created the Afghan Refugee Party? It does create it.
Where does in the Quran say?
Dr. Khaja, it matters deeply. Afghanistan now, everybody laughs at Afghanistan. Everybody makes fun of the Taliban. Nobody looks at 20 years of absolute tyranny.
That is our duty
at the hand. No, hold on. Just hold on. Nobody looks at the fact that Afghanistan was simply one little checker space in a game between Russia and between America.
Yes,
two superpowers that trampled upon a people that were living in a relatively peaceful existence. I mean, Afghanis, they're good people. They're generous people. They're noble people. Many good qualities about the Afghanis. There are some things that we don't like about the Afghani culture. Well, there's plenty of things I don't like about many cultures. But the point is, generally, they were a functional culture with a great tradition and proud people, men and women. Now, there are people that have been, in 20 years of war, an entire generation grown up. Do you see? So it's very easy to point the finger at those people, but I feel
I'm not pointing the fingers at them. I'm pointing the fingers at the whole Muslim Ummah. I'm saying that we are in no condition. We allow this to happen on the first instance because of our own impotence. And then when we have a problem, we say, well, this is not our problem, this was a created problem, so we have no responsibility. I'm bringing that question right back to us, and I'm saying that this is our responsibility.
I think the responsibility, I mean, for me as an American, you see, I mean, you immigrated to this country, and you're an American by immigration. For me as an American, growing up in this country, as somebody that converted to Islam, you know, I would say that we hold a deep responsibility as Americans. Do you see? I believe that. I would say for an Afghani, I think that it's you know, victims are volunteers, like they say. You always need a volunteer to be a victim. I think victimization is a terrible psychological space to be in, and I don't think that the Afghanis should look at it like that. But I think personally we need to bring some onus of responsibility here to this country.
Yes, of course.
And I think Americans need to be reminded of that fact, that we do have a moral responsibility, that the way the world is being run, there is responsibility in this country, because this country has massive interests in the Muslim world, and for that reason this country's foreign policy supports some of the